Welcome to Storytime with Tallulah. Today's reading comes from r/MaliciousCompliance. Our first story is titled, Sorry You Revoked My Overtime Privileges Yesterday. This was several years ago when I worked at a redacted big-name coffee shop. My shift was 5 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., and often around 1 p.m., giant groups of kids on school field trips would come through the area. This was a coffee shop located in a major California city, very close to a bunch of museums. I had been working a lot of overtime because of it, to help my coworkers through the rush. I got written up by my supervisor for doing too many overtime shifts without approval. I was explicitly informed to not work overtime again. I had lost overtime privileges until corporate deemed I could have them again, and working overtime again prior to that would result in further disciplinary action. The day after I was written up, right as my shift ended, 3 big buses full of kids unloaded and filled the shop. At 1:30 p.m. on the dot, my watch alarm went off and I went back to clock out. The store manager who wrote me up the day prior said, "Wait, where are you going?" I reminded her that I'd lost my overtime privileges, clocked out, retrieved the shift drink I'd made for myself right before the rush, and left. The next day, I was informed my overtime privileges had been reinstated. Edits. Whoa, this took off in a way I didn't expect. This was almost a decade ago when I was in my early 20s and an eager to please employee, so I didn't demand they take the write-up off my record, unfortunately. My coworkers all knew about the write-up and were upset about it too, so none of them were mad when I spite left to prove a point. I worked the super morning shift by choice because I used to be a morning person. Because the field trips were super sporadic and there was no way to predict them without knowing the field trip schedule of the entire region, our manager had somehow managed to avoid ever experiencing one since she typically left around noon. Once she saw that they were and started believing us, they scheduled one of the afternoon shift people to come in an hour early so we had better overlap. Wow, that's how a lot of jobs are, aren't there? Just a lot of poo-poo bosses that just don't really understand how anything works, but hey, at least it sounds like they learned the lesson on that one. Thanks for the story. Our next story is titled, Boss Agrees with Secretary that I am not the office manager, so I stopped managing the office. When I was doing my articles at a small law firm internship to be admitted as an attorney, I was the go-to person for everything at the office, setting up computers, buying stationery, paying bills, going to court, seeing clients, etc. After being admitted as an attorney, I continued doing all this because the secretary only did about 20% of what a secretary would usually do and refused to do anything else. My boss does some shady business, doesn't pay taxes, etc., so he couldn't just fire her for fear of her ratting him out. He also never disciplined her. We are not in the US. Since we worked from my boss's mother's house, the secretary also spent about 50% of her day just chatting to his mother, and they became fast friends. Guess who was always the evil one that everyone ganged up on? Yours truly. I was made out to be incompetent at my job, and I used to cry a lot and almost became an alcoholic from work stress. One day, the secretary got really upset with me. After I asked her to buy stationery since we didn't have staples, and after a heated argument told me that I'm not the office manager and should stop lording it about as if I was. Bear in mind, I was her senior both as an attorney and a number of years worked at the firm. My boss did nothing and rather got upset with me, and so did his mother. I decided there and then I am done doing both secretary work and my attorney work because I was working roughly 50 to 60 hours per week, standard is 40, trying to get everything done without receiving overpay. The unemployment rate in my country is around 30%, and the legal field supply of lawyers exceeds demand. She knew this and my boss knew this, but no one cared that I was basically working myself into an early grave. Cue malicious compliance. If everyone agrees that I am not the office manager, then I will stop managing the flow of the office and only do my attorney work. I stopped paying the bills, buying the stationery, reminding my boss of important meetings, etc. Within 2 weeks, the electricity was cut off for 10 days because it wasn't paid and my boss's elderly mother and the rest of his family had no electricity. We could also not work for those 10 days. Once the electricity went on, the phone lines were cut because of non-payment. We could again not work. The post piled up, there were no stationery. We couldn't do service of court documents because our service providers cut us off. It went on for weeks. I simply worked around the issues and sorted my life out. One example. When the Wi-Fi was off, I used my cell phone to hotspot my laptop without telling anyone. In the end, my boss and his mother begged me to do what I used to do, but I refused. Since I was focusing more on my actual work, my fees increased and my pay increased as well. Shortly thereafter, I moved away from that office to our secondary office and worked alongside lovely colleagues who all did what they got paid to do. I've been at this new office, same firm, just a different location, for the last 2 years. Wow, that sounds like an absolute nightmare. Sounds like a bunch of lawsuits in America, but you said you're not there, so I don't know what kind of workers' rights you have, and that's just unfortunate, but hey, it sounds like you're in a better situation, so I'm glad that worked out for you at least. Thanks for the story. Our next story is titled, Not Qualified for the Promotion? Then I'll Just Do My Job. A few years ago, I worked for a furniture store in the back store. My job consisted of unloading and loading trucks, assembling furniture, and placing it on the main floor of the store. After around 6 months there, my supervisor announced he resigned, meaning his post was up for grabs. I had all the technical requirements, so I applied, but they gave the job to another one of my colleagues who had more experience, which was totally reasonable. After maybe 1 year, my then supervisor just stopped coming into work for no reason. He just decided he had had enough and he just left. No 2 weeks notice or anything. So while the director tried to get him, I took over the role of supervisor. I was the one with the most experience, which means that combined with my regular work, I was now the one telling people what to do when, doing the schedule, and all the paperwork for the shipment. 3 weeks later, my colleague was officially fired by my director. In those 3 weeks, I kept doing the job of supervisor and doing it pretty well, so I thought that the promotion would come to me. But my director did nothing. I went to see him, explained what I had been doing, and asked if I got the promotion, to which he answered that I was not qualified, not smart enough to do this job. After some thinking, I just decided that if I was not smart enough to do the job, then I shouldn't do it. So I went back doing my regular job, and I also started looking for something else. 4 to 5 days after I stopped filling in, my director comes see me in the back store asking why the F the job isn't being done. After all, without me to organize it, nothing was getting out of the store to be delivered to the client. I just reminded him of our previous meeting, and he told me, yeah, I remembered that. What I meant is you're not qualified to get the pay bonus for the job. You still have to do the job, you idiot. I have to admit, I still wonder how tough that would work. Still a bit dumbfounded, I just told him that if I wasn't going to get paid for it, I certainly wouldn't do the job. And that considering we were already short-staffed with my old supervisor gone, he should be a bit more polite. Apparently, this was an unreasonable request. A total lack of respect to him and worthy of firing me. Yep, still don't get how that would fix anything, but he's the boss. I packed everything and left knowing that the back store, which needed 5 people to operate, was now down to 3, with the most experienced worker having a total of 4 months. It only took my boss one day to call me back and telling me maybe he went overboard and that perhaps we could arrange something for the promotion. To which I replied that I would not be coming back since I had a few interviews lined up. I hung up while he was still cussing at me. After a few months at my new job, I heard some surprising news. The store had closed down after 2 other back store employees resigned. Gotta admit that it felt good to see my old boss finally get what he deserved. Yeah, it always sucks working for crappy bosses, but hey, it does sound like they got what they deserved. Too bad, just that no one learned their lesson, I guess, really. Nothing good came out of it. I don't know, it's kind of unfortunate, but hey, at least you're in a better spot. Thanks for the story. Our next story is titled, Won't Let Me Plant Sunflowers? Fine. Story happened a couple of years ago, but it's my favorite lawyer story and I hope you enjoy. None of the following is legal advice. Don't take legal advice from randos on the internet. Client walks into the office and asks us for a contract review. He then hands over an HOA contract. Before slogging through a whole HOA contract, I asked him what he was hoping to accomplish. They want me to dig up my sunflowers. Your sunflowers? Yes. I planted a row of sunflowers outside my house. They pranced by and said that sunflowers are not allowed per the contract I signed. So I want you to tell me if that is true or not. Sir, before anything else, I need to tell you that this will be likely an hourly fee bill. HOAs are notorious for dragging things out, so these could quickly become expensive sunflowers. I don't care. This is America and I should be able to plant sunflowers, dang it. Still thinking he wasn't that serious about sunflowers, I asked for a 3-hour retainer. He immediately pulled out a checkbook and paid for 4 hours. So I buckled down to review the alleged anti-sunflower clause. Just for reference, the sunflowers he wanted to plant were really big, 5 feet, and all along the front of the house. It was a very substantial amount of sunflowers. The contract did indeed contain a clause with a very thorough list of which plants were and were not allowed to be planted. The list had just about every plant I could think of, in an alphabetical order. I think apple, banana, cauliflower, dill, sunflowers included. Corn was not included, which becomes very important later. Quick legal point: if you write no dogs allowed, it is normally assumed that you are talking about all dogs generally. If you write no labs, golden retrievers, or poodles allowed, it is normally assumed that all other dogs are allowed. Sometimes a not great attorney will write a super long list of pad hours, read charge more, instead of just writing no plants without prior approval or something. I called the client back in for the bad news, and explaining the above legal point. I let him know that the HOA got a raw deal from whoever drafted the contract. No can do on the sunflowers, but if it makes you feel any better, they probably overbilled by whoever wrote this contract. Pretty shoddy work too. They even forgot to write down corn, but they included nonsense like dragon fruit. So yes to corn, no to sunflowers? I didn't really check the contract for corn, but it's not prohibited in the plant section, so probably? Excellent, thank you, that'll work. I thought he was oddly happy with bad news. Then 2 or 3 weeks later, he came in with a picture of his house surrounded by huge sunflowers. What happened? This guy drove out to the country and bought obnoxiously large and ugly corn stalks. He promptly planted them where the sunflowers had been. When confronted by the HOA, he told them, paraphrasing, to suck it, the contracts lets me plant corn. Then after some negotiation, he agreed to take the corn down in exchange for permission to plant sunflowers. Now we are friends, he is still a great client, and he lives surrounded by a ridiculous moat of sunflowers. Oh, that's an awesome story. Yeah, the HOA stuff is really stupid. It's really dumb. Like, I get that it's there to like keep the community in check or whatever, but it just seems like a bunch of bureaucratic nonsense that just costs everyone money for no reason. But hey, sounds like it worked out in the end, so good for you and good for your client. That was entertaining. Thank you for the story. Our next story is titled, I can't order a drink you're advertising and have open ingredients for? Fine. Not sure if this fits here or there is a more suitable sub, but here goes. I'm in the UK and was with friends at one of the main coffee shop brands. I won't say which one, but it's similar to Cost a Lot. It was a few days after Christmas last year, important for later. When I was served by the barista, it was obvious I was going to have an experience. This guy acted haughtily and spoke to people with a sneer and came across like he considered himself a prince among men. He had a long, floppy fringe that he kept brushing out of his contempt-filled eyes every few seconds. He clearly didn't want to be there or deal with the likes of me. Awkward for both of us. It was a two-man team, so a barista would take the order and make the drink, so he had to make whatever anyone ordered. It was very early January, and the shop still has advertisements up for Christmas seasonal drinks. I'm a fan of uncommon flavored coffee or hot chocolate, and said shop was advertising a Black Forest hot chocolate. Black Forest is basically dark chocolate, black cherry, and cream. I ordered one and the barista looked me up and down and sneered, "That's a Christmas drink." Me, yes. Barista, "It's after Christmas." Yes. Barista smirking, "So I can't make you a Christmas drink." "But you're advertising it and you've still got the ingredients behind the bar." This drink is basically a shot of flavored sauce, hot chocolate, and cream on top. It's not that onerous or taxing to make compared to a normal hot chocolate. It's literally a normal hot chocolate with a flavor syrup put in. Barista sighing and rolling his eyes, "It's not available right now." I wondered if he was being a tool for some unknown superiority complex, was being lazy and didn't want to make this beverage, or if there really was some directive. So I threw up a weather balloon question. Okay, fine. In that case, would I be able to buy a single shot of a flavored syrup, please? It says they are 35p on the board. Barista dismissively, "I don't see why not. Can I order a shot of the black cherry syrup there, but in a medium-sized takeaway cup?" Barista tuts and silently turns, gets a shot of said syrup in a cup for me, and contemptuously places it in front of me. "Anything else?" he sneers. Cue my malicious compliance. I slide the cup back to him and say, "Can you make a medium hot chocolate in this cup for me, please, and stir it well before you put the whipped cream on top?" Barista grimaces and realizes that I followed his instructions completely and still got myself a Black Forest hot chocolate. I stand and watch him make it, which he does with the most reluctant and bitter energy imaginable. For the record, it was pretty good. Wow. Well, some people are just miserable, aren't they? I hope that person's life gets better, honestly. But hey, at least you got your drink and it sounds delicious. I'm glad it was good. And it's a good thing you watched him, because otherwise you might have spit in it, which is not a good thing. Thanks for the story. Our next story is titled, Change Me from Hourly to Salary to Cut My Pay? Okay. This takes place in the before times when people could eat out and gather in large numbers. I used to work as a chef for an owner who liked to micromanage things and was a bit narcissistic. I'd been working there for about 3 years, getting good reviews, customers loved me, updated the menu. Made everything from scratch, people used to think the place was open, box, heat, serve food. Quality had gone up, morale was great in my kitchen. Annual sales went from $850,000 to $1.4 million, about maximum capacity for the space. The increase in sales and income went to the owner's head. He was always spending money on frivolous things and squandering cash. Sound system, stage for the event space, etc. One example, I needed a new alto sham. A used one would have sufficed. Nope, he bought the top of the line one that could be used as a smoker too, $12,000 versus what I wanted. Could he gotten used for $1,500? Granted, I enjoyed that piece of equipment, which after I left, they no longer used the smoker function. Years later, I still occasionally get emails and invoices from a vendor and see they bring in pre-cooked smoked meats now. I was hourly, but then the owner realized during the busy season, I and my sous chef put in 70 to 8 hours per week. Doing this, he realized I made more take-home pay from his business than he did. At peak times, he'd maybe work 40 to 50 hours a week. So to save money, he puts me and my sous on salary, effectively cutting my pay by about $10,000 a year. My sous netted a loss of $2,000 a year. If we were to work at our current level effort. During all of this, the owner is saying he is not expecting us to work over 40 hours a week, ever. He even has this written into our contracts. So with the extra time off at home with family, it is okay. I still like the job and my staff. During the slower time, this was great. Also during this time, I had won a local award for my cooking. And the narcissistic owner was not too pleased. He was no longer recognized as the creative force in the kitchen that bears his name. So his meddling and micromanaging increased. It had gone from, it's your kitchen, cop chef, do what you want, to, it's my name and my kitchen, do it this way. Morale and quality began to suffer. Just prior to the holiday season, my sous chefs wanted to go back to his home country for 2.5 months, November, December, and January, peak crazy times for us. I have good help and am good with it. Owner approved the time off. Owner thinking I'm gonna save him some money that holiday season by working my usual 70 to 80 hours per week. Nope, cue the malicious compliance. I start writing the holiday schedule. Sue is on vacation, I have my 40 during my key prep times and peak business times. The rest of my staff gets serious overtime. Basically, the sous chef and I carried a lot of the weight in the kitchen and could outperform most of our small staff. So with Sue on vacay and I only pulling 40 full-time, staff is now working 60-ish hours a week and part-timers are getting 40. Things are running pretty smoothly until the owner realizes I'm not there like I am always during the holiday rush. He's in the kitchen more trying to micromanage my staff, giving them poor advice, contradicting my directions and timing for events, screwing up the small parties my staff could handle while I'm off. After a few weeks of this, he realizes he's going to be paying the staff out more in overtime than he saved on moving me and my sous to salary. He starts demanding I work more hours and stop hemorrhaging overtime to the kitchen staff. I showed him my contract where I am not expected to work over 40 hours a week. Now he says it's just a guideline. I hold him to the 40 hours a week, it's Christmas, and now I can for once spend time with my family. Now with my sous returning, I'm burned out from the constant micromanaging and gaslighting by the owner. I hand the reins to my sous and change careers after 25 years in the industry and never look back. Wow. Wow. Hey, that is some good malicious compliance though. It sounds like you brought that business to life and unfortunately your boss was ungrateful and didn't understand the value of you and now he lost you. And it sounds like the business kind of suffered for it. But I'm glad you're doing better and thank you for the story. Well, that's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed. Thank you for sticking around. If you'd like to hear more, there's a few other videos here off to the side. The more you watch, the more it helps the channel, so I greatly appreciate that. Anyways, I hope you're staying safe out there. And with that being said, we'll see you next time.